My guest today is a man who I adore. He's got a lot going on in all forms of entertainment. He informs people, he educates people, and through the arts on every level. We can go way back. We go way back. He is a tour de force in how he approaches entertainment as an actor, a comedian, a singer, a sketch artist, an author, a radio host, a producer, a theater cabaret artist, and producer of those things, book publisher, blogger, a theater producer. He's just extraordinary, and I could go on and on. He kind of puts that jack of all trades to pales in comparison, or triple threat, anything. It's all he's so many things. He's Renaissance beyond Renaissance. He has a great new book out called All for the Best: How Godspell Transferred from Stage to Screen. I only say that because I made a typo earlier. And an upcoming cabaret, Andrew Martin Found in Translation. There's a few other things we'll just reveal as we go along, or otherwise we'll have no interview and all intro. I'm pleased to welcome back to the show Andrew Martin. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for welcoming me back, darling. I'm so happy. This is great.
It's great. So I want you to share, if you could, just briefly. Now, I know the book is part of that, so maybe you could share on something different. One of the first transporting moments as a youth witnessing theater, film, or television, or all three, but you don't have to, I know one of them was the book title, so if you want to do a different one, we'll be into that later, but it's funny, I thought of that way before I realized that what your connection to was with Godspell, but we're not going there yet. I just want to know some transporting moments in the theater when you were a child, or film or television.
Well, there's so.
Just pick one.
As far as Godspell goes.
No, as far as just watching something. I don't want you to pick Godspell now. We're going to talk about Godspell in a couple minutes. I'm saying you can leave that one out.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, I was kind of bitten by the theater bug when I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. I come from an entertainment family. My grandmother was the first woman in New York to own an operated chain of dance schools.
Okay.
And my mother was a child star during the golden age of TV on shows like Arthur Godfrey and His Friends and The Paul Whiteman Show and Star Times. She was really the first prominent female ventriloquist. She paved the way for Shari Lewis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, so so it's in the blood. And when I was 9, I just said, I want to do this. And I just started doing it. And writing was something I always had a talent for, but it wasn't something I was particularly interested in. It's just when I was 21, there was this new magazine starting up, and they needed writers, and they wanted younger people. And so I said, okay, let's give this a try. And it's been 25 years of that.
Great. Yeah. We're going to talk more about that, too, because he's so many. It's like a wordsmith. Okay, whose life story would you like to see made into a play, musical, one-person show, or a film that has not been made yet?
Well, see...
Besides your own. No.
Oh, no, mine would tank at the box office. No, it's funny that you mentioned that, because actually about 8 years ago, I collaborated on a screenplay about the life and career of Alan Sherman.
Yes, I read about that.
And yeah, so we're still looking for a studio, and we'd like to see that be made. But I've written 3 others on my own. One is about Lena Zavaroni, who was the great child star from Great Britain in the 1970s and 80s. Another is about Dorothy Squires, who was a great British vocalist who made a tremendous comeback in the 1970s and had a miserable ending, I'm sorry to say. And a third is about Timmy Euro, who was a great singer who came out of New Jersey and really had, and still I think has, a big following. But unfortunately she came in right at the same time as the British invasion, and there wasn't really the opportunity.
A lot of spotlighting on her.
Right, exactly, because that was the early 60s. So.
I'm going to ask one more question that I was going to hold for later, but I want to ask now, but since we're talking in this vein. You have such a respect and reverence for artists and for
Oh, yes.
theater. Now, and did that really come because of your genes, or it's like beyond? I mean, you're one of the, I don't know if you're one of the few, but you write about people, but you write about them with a lot of reverence. I mean, even if there's something you might have to criticize, you're not going to criticize it in a, and I don't think you do often, but you're always giving like the best of the best, and also educating people and preserving. So when did that like become your, I don't want to call it niche mission or part of your mission? I mean, we're going to talk about all the different things you do in performance, and you're in the book, but you specifically over and over and over again highlight artists, and not just in theater and film. It could be music, it could be, all different things. So just talk about where the reverence and the respect and the regard came from, and the need to make sure people get a spotlight,
right?
In more ways than their initial thing.
Well, I think it's partly because I'm a performer also.
Right.
I mean, first of all, I always get very embarrassed, like at a party, when somebody will introduce me to their friends as, oh, this is Andrew Martin, the entertainment critic. Because I'm not a critic. I don't write criticism.
No.
I'm a reviewer.
Right.
I write reviews. And very often people have asked me, well, what is the difference between a critic and a reviewer, other than semantics? And I say, well, the simple truth is, a critic goes to a show looking for everything that's wrong. A reviewer goes to a show looking for everything that's right.
Right.
And that's why when I review a show, I go looking for the very best things to talk about. And I do have reverence for...
Well, you also bring in the history of things and all
yes.
that, and like where these people started or how
yes,
they...
because I want to make it
You color the
interesting.
picture. You fill in the blank.
I want to color the picture. That's
Right.
You just summed it up completely. I want to color the picture. I don't just want to say, oh, here I was, and here was a show, and here was their song list, and here's what they did, and here's what was good, and here what was bad. No, I want to show, in part, their history, and what they've done in the past, and what they've won awards for, and what they've been lauded for in a critical sense, and in sense of their reviews. Mm-hmm. But I'm also, as I say, I'm a performer, so I am not out to... there's a common misconception
mm-hmm.
that people who review or people who are critics
mm-hmm.
only do it because they're not successful.
Oh, they can't do the other thing.
Right,
They've
exactly.
never, but that's not your case. You've
That's
been
not, well,
award-winning,
I hope
nominated.
It's not my case.
No, it's not. I mean, you've won awards for your performances and all kinds of things. So.
Yes, both for writing and for entertainment.
Yes,
and so, I mean, I guess I'm in a slightly, I don't want to say more privileged, but a different position.
Well, you know what? You've walked in the shoes.
Well, yes.
You've walked in the shoes.
And I still do.
Yeah. So, but a lot of critics are just critics. It's not like they perform. They don't come from that. But also what I think is so great, and then we're going to move on because I don't want to lose too much time, is that I feel like even if somebody goes to, and Mel will put it up at some point, the Andrew Martin Report, when you read one of those articles that you ponder on or write about, and some are reviews and some are just like, which we'll talk about in a minute, how the Godspell thing came. She put the report up. Isn't that lovely? His report's up there.
Oh, look at that.
I feel like when I read them, like I know something about the performer or the work in a way that you wouldn't know just if you went to the theater and saw the show. Like you get like a little behind story or backstory because you seem to know information about people's history and their stories. So that's you. It's like theater history when you write. I mean, I don't want to but in a way, you know what I'm saying? That's my feeling. It's you give a lot of honor to people when you write.
Well, I'm honored that you think so, and that is, in many, many ways, what I try to do. Right. I've very often I've been accused of simply setting out to sort of dazzle people with my knowledge, and it's never that. It's not that.
It's like supplemental reading, like you're at
Yes.
school and you have to
Yes.
read something, and if
Yes.
you want to know a little bit more about the French Revolution, you might have to like pull out another book
Exactly.
or read somebody's letter that they wrote to somebody,
Right.
and then you
Right.
have those little tidbits that you can't, it's like when people go on a trip and they're with a tour group, but they want to go off on their own and get a little bit more of a personal thing. You're
Right.
giving them more of their own private little
what
thing.
I try to do.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you recognize
Yeah, I
it,
definitely
because that
do.
is my mission. Yes.
Right. So we're going to take a moment for an offering, and when we return, Andrew will share, he shared a little bit about how his career took flight as a child, but we're going to talk a little bit more about, how he really carved out his performance career and then the writing, and ultimately we got to talk about the book because that's what we're to talk about. But we'll see you in just a moment. There's so much to talk about. Come back. Okay. Is she on the phone?
Okay, speed it up now. Come on.
We're back. We got double image. Something weird happened there, but okay. We were on that quote for a long time. You can see me.
I love TV.
I love. You can see us like our ghosts of ourselves. So, Andrew, you did talk about at 9 and starting and wanting to do theater, and you were with, which I think is so cool. And I don't want to go into a whole lot about it. You were a founding member of TADA, which
was.
in 1984. And I want you to know that in schools I'm in, that program is still soaring. They take
Yeah.
it into schools and help them with actually things about history and stuff, and they create performances with
Yes.
musicals. I saw one
Yes.
at one of my schools where they were doing, I think, something, colonies, but they had part of Les Mis song in there and
Right,
stuff.
right.
It's so great.
Right.
I mean, it's so great. So that was really wonderful. And how did you started at 9, you did many things. How did you, what kind of training did you do in brief, and how would you say it's, the shaping of
Well, I started when I was 9. And I just, like I say, I got bitten by the bug. And my grandmother, who owned the chain of dance schools, found me a local children's acting coach. So I started with him, a wonderful guy named Lenny Foreman. I started with him twice a week after school. And he ran a little acting class locally where I'm from in Rego Park, New York. And then the summer that I turned 13, I began a summer program as a student at the Usedan Center for Creative Performing Arts on Long Island in Wheatley Heights, and did that for 3 summers. And then the following summer, which was the summer of '84, was when I did TADA. And summer of '85, when I turned 17, I did my first professional show, my first paid gig. At Theater for the New City,
Great.
Downtown, which at the time was on 2nd Avenue between 10th and 11th Streets. We did a very, very silly musical called Man of Wax as part of their street theater program. I did about, I guess 8 very little roles. It was a very silly show. This was the height of Reaganomics. So this was about Reagan and his economic policies, and it was a blast. And I worked with some wonderful people. And then from there, I just sort of went on. I did summer stock, and I did other shows off Broadway, and did some films and some TV.
Right.
And so that's where really the foundation of it.
Right. And he does have, which I want to say, just throw it in here now, you're going to do a show coming up
Yes.
in the Unfringe Festival, which kind of highlights your early days in the business, and it's called, you can say it, it's so cute.
It is called an appetizing yarn.
And the reason is because you loved, and I didn't know this about you till we talked, and I know you, but I didn't know that you were such a knitter. You're a really a great knitter.
I am. Not just knitting, crocheting, needlepoint.
Anything that's with,
Yeah.
So, and here's show is awesome because it's 75 minutes, one man. During that whole conversation that he's having with his audience, he's knitting a hat, which gets raffled off at the end of the show.
Yes.
So with your ticket, you don't know if they're going to call out your number, and you're going to go home with the hat, which is so fun. That's so great.
Unfortunately, it's going to be in the summer when you can't really wear the hat.
Right.
But
unless you make a cotton knit, okay?
Well, I could do that.
Yes, you could.
But I mean, the hardest part of that is deciding on what colors, because you don't want somebody to win the hat if they hate a red, black, and gray mix.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but it's no. The play is going to be interesting. Because, as you say, it is part of the Unfringed Festival at the Secret Theater in Long Island City.
Right.
And the central through line is that I've always loved needle crafting since I was a child. And so it's basically my autobiography up until
woven while you're weaving, which is so...
Yes, up until I turned 21. And so a lot of the Tada stuff and the Theater for the New City stuff and a lot of stuff from my childhood and not so much the cabaret. Well, some cabaret stuff, yeah. But it's more about my parents and my childhood and growing up in New York and what that was like. But I knit a hat from start to finish over the course. And that's
pretty good. You're pretty fast.
Right,
yeah, you're a pretty fast knitter. So there's too much to ask in too little time. I do want to say that this business is a lot about bonds and connecting, and that seems to be a really important thing to you. And I wondered how that served you, over the years in terms of all the different people you've met from all your things, and who are some of your I don't know, the big list, but do you have some go-to people that are your when you're a mentor or a guide or something besides your mom or your family, from your bonds or connections in?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure if I can sum it up quite so succinctly.
Right. Well, try.
I will tell you that I've been afforded the chance to meet a lot of really wonderful people, both as an actor and as a playwright and as a journalist and in radio. So if I was going to narrow it down, that would be a little impossible between the four fields.
And if you don't want to say anybody specifically.
No. I will tell you that I'm very, very honored to have been a friend of Anne Mira, who recently passed, and may she rest in peace.
Love her.
And her husband, Jerry Stiller. I have been honored to know Ellie Stone, who is one of the greatest voice instructors in the world, and was also the star of Jacques Brel's Alive and Well Living in Paris, which, of course, also loans itself to my upcoming cabaret act, Found in Translation.
Yeah, so we can chat. Oh, that's good.
I've had a lot of mentors in cabaret. I would say probably Sidney Meyer, who is the booking manager at Don't Tell Mama, I think always gives a lesson to everybody in his presence, and I'm just honored beyond words to know him. This may sound a little ridiculous, but I consider two of my greatest mentors on earth and two of my most wonderful friends to be Carol Demas and Paula Janis, who hosted the children's show The Magic Garden on WPIX Channel 11.
Yes.
And they're just absolutely wonderful women, and they have wonderful husbands, and I'm privileged to know them both. But they also gave me so very much as a child, coming home and watching their show every day.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there are so many more. Peggy Gordon, who was in the original cast of Godspell.
Right.
There's so many that
Right.
I
well, that's
wouldn't
good. I
know-
think you did good.
I
think,
wouldn't know where to begin.
But you did, but that's what I'm saying. It's like that there's the connection that happens in the arts that, some people stay with you a long time, some people are with you
Yes.
for a little time, but
Yes.
they have it's like a quilt. You have like little patchwork of all kinds of
Absolutely.
people in your life.
Absolutely.
It's great. It's
Absolutely.
really great. So really quick, and then we got to take an offering and get to the book because I don't want it to run out of time. We do the way we met is very strange. I'm not doing the offering yet, Mel. Right after this. Andrew called me. He had seen me on Joe Franklin, and Franklin passed.
Indeed.
And he actually asked me to come on the show. Didn't you? Yes, I think. Or did you ask me to have your host on? That woman.
No, I asked you. Well, no, I
You
just
called
said
me to say I saw you on Joe Franklin.
I called you and said I saw you on Joe Franklin, and I think your charisma is intense. And then you asked me to be on the show.
That's what happened. And then he tells me what your mother said, which is so adorable. She said, what, that girl has spunk or something?
She said, oh, that girl has so much spark.
Oh, spark. Oh, okay. I thought she said spunk. He just told me that the other day when we met up. So,
and you were on Joe's show.
I was on Joe's show.
Uncle Joe, as we call him at WPAG, Uncle Joe.
Yes.
You were on Uncle Joe's show that night with Phoebe Legere, whose show I was directing at the time.
Right, that was
so
that. That's why you saw me. Yes, that's why. So it's funny, and that's a long time ago.
Yes.
So before we run out of time, we're going to take the offering now, Mel, and then we're going right to God's Bell, and whatever else we can get in after that, we will, but I don't know how much time is left. I think not much. Okay, we're taking an offering, and we'll be right back to talk about the book, the film, the everything. The film, that's all. We're back with Andrew Martin. So, Andrew, I just don't want to run out of time. So, I do want to say, like in reading some of the book, I think it's so cool that you wrote this book about God's Bell, and I'll just try to. And I, first I was like, oh, I wonder why he came up with that. But of course, reading about it, you had written in your blog about some of the women. You'd gotten together with them. Then somebody came to you and said, why don't you write a book? And then it just all started rolling. You started getting folks. But the thing is, I wanted to say, to know how it transported you as a child. For me, I saw this play. I was in high school, I think, but I saw it at a college that was a professional art school across from my school. And I just went, crazy.
Bananas,
And then that's probably the only album I ever personally bought or had somebody buy for me. I played it to death. I wanted to do it. In college, I auditioned for something. I didn't get in. I was dashed, but I thought I was really good, and I was really good. I should have been in it. But it's a very transformative experience to watch that play.
Yes.
And then let's just talk about it. The movie, for you to revisit this whole thing at this time.
Right.
And then also, I wondered how it came to play, but it did because the idea to write it was coming up around the idea of when they revived it.
Yes.
So just share a little bit about the book is great, and there's so much neat things about making that into so quickly a film, and that it came out of a college. A thesis project. So
It did. It was John Michael Tebelak, may he rest in peace, wrote it as his college thesis at Carnegie Mellon, and it just became extremely exciting very quickly. And
then La Mama did it, right?
Yes, Ellen Stewart brought it to La Mama in, I believe it was March of 1971.
And then they brought in Stephen.
Yes. Well, then Edgar Lansbury and Joe Baru came to see it at La Mama, and they thought, oh, this is spectacular, but we hate the score.
Because there wasn't that much of a score, I heard. There was some music, but not that much.
Well, there was some. It was written by a man named Dwayne Bolick, and who was also a student at Carnegie. And there was a score, and
Actually, one song's still in it, right? The original.
By My Side,
Right,
by
yeah,
Peggy
which I
Gordon.
love. That's one of my favorite
Peggy
songs.
Gordon and Jay Hamburger. And so they, meaning Edgar and Joe, wanted to bring it into a more profile house, not necessarily a bigger theater, but a more profile high-profile
Space, yeah.
theater. So they, who at the time were entertaining Stephen Schwartz because he had just written Pippin, and they really thought that Steve was going to be the great new hope of musical theater, that he was going to put a new spin on everything. But Pippin wasn't quite ready to roll.
Right.
So they brought Steve to see Godspell, and he took a look at it and he said, you know what? I can work with this. I can work with this. And strangely enough, he did not throw out By My Side. And he could have. And Peggy, to this day, she'll back me up on this, it amazes Peggy Gordon that he had every opportunity to take that song out of the show, and he didn't.
Right.
Because he said, how can
It's
I
a
replace
beautiful song.
He
I
said,
love that
I
song.
can't replace this. This is as good as it gets. I can replace everything else, but I can't replace this. And he really replaced. I mean, Turn Back, Old Man apparently originally was a ballad that was written for Robin Lamont. It was not written for Sonia Manzano. And well, Jeffrey Milet, may he rest in peace, the poor man, had written a ballad, a very hypnotic ballad called The Raven and the Swan, which got tossed right out, which is unfortunate because it's a beautiful song.
Right.
But yeah, that's how it all came to be.
Right, and so Mel, make sure if you get a chance to show that book cover. You might have done it already, but I just want to make sure they see it because you can get it.
I was trying not to look.
And
So.
you don't have to. I just wanted. There, she put it up.
Yes.
So, and then quite quickly after it was a very successful musical play.
Yes.
And then everybody's done it, and it's been great for also churches do it, and they use the music in church and everything.
Oh yes,
it's great.
And it yes.
And then it became this incredible film that really utilized New York in a way that probably hadn't been utilized before,
Yes.
quite to that extent, in a musical, Broadway, staging it all over the city.
Right, exactly.
It was running around the city.
Exactly. Well, see, that's the interesting thing about it, because the way John Michael wrote it initially was for it to be an empty world. And that's the way it's played on stage, is an empty world. When David Green started directing it, he took the idea of an empty world and instead turned it into a world that was full of things, but was empty of people. So that's why it was New York, with the building, the skyscrapers, with the junkyard, with everything. But there were no people involved. And that's how that came to be. That was David Green. That was not Tebelak's intention. And it also, to be honest with you, wasn't Stephen Schwartz's intention either, because Stephen Schwartz would have, as he told me, and it's in the book, preferred for the film to have been directed more in the style of Richard Lester, who directed A Hard Day's Night. He would have preferred a more frenetic energy, and he didn't like the idea of the cast being turned into flower children hippies as opposed to clowns, which is what they were in the original show. So, yeah, so it was a very much a convalescence of ideas on the lot, on the part of a lot of really brilliant geniuses, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, well, it's again another great book.
Yes.
Because it gives you so much information about.
This is the Carmen Mathis Show.
Hello. I'm Carmen Mathis.